Welcome everyone to a casted game for Age of Empires 4, and today spawning in on the west side of the map, playing in blue, we've got Valdemar playing as the Holy Roman Empire, and his opponent in the east side of the map playing in red, we've got Wham playing, also known as, well, Puppy Paw Fan, as the English. Welcome everyone to Dry Arabia. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Good having a cracking game today, the English versus the HRE, lots to talk about, two fantastic players of course. Battling it out on, I would argue, the best map in Age of Empires, Dry Arabia. But there's lots to talk about. The English versus the HRE, two civilizations that were there right from the beginning of Age of Empires 4 on its release, but have gone through a lot of changes. You've got the English opening up with two Dark Age farms, which is something pretty new. And a lot of it revolves around a lot of civilizations making this play towards trying to keep the scout on the map as long as possible to get as many sheep as possible. Now, unfortunately, he hasn't actually got any just yet, Puppy Paw Fan, or Wham, we should call him. Obviously the brother to Puppy Paw. I'm sure he is a Puppy Paw fan. Either way, going to bring in as many sheep as possible. Considering that the HRE had the prelate, 40% buffering on the gathering rate of these villagers, they chew through the food very, very quickly. And so to try and deny as many sheep as possible is important. But yeah, I mean, going back to it, the reason why this is kind of interesting how it's gone for this, the two farms. A lot of civilizations do play for this, trying to get the scout there as long as possible. You know, civilizations that go for berries, the Delhi, the Abbasid dynasty, the Ayyubids. The Japanese can go for berries, and even sort of the Byzantines can go for it as well for the olive oil. Sometimes we see the Byzantines go for the olive grove early on as well. Kind of interesting to think about as a new strategy that the English are opting for today. Bear in mind there's also a couple of changes with the civilizations. The Abbey of the King, giving the king for free, is a fantastic bonus for them recently. Gives that a little bit of pressure, which is pretty nice to have as the English, especially when you want to challenge the HRE in their kind of fast castle time. Speaking of which, the HRE don't always go for fast castle these days. Occasionally they do play an extended feudal age, but what is going on here? It's going to be a minework palace? Okay, well that's a bit weird. Definitely something we don't see all that often, but it's an interesting choice. Now, I have been a fan of the minework palace for quite some time, but I mean, the Ark and Chapel has been where it's about for a very long time. You know, garrison your prelate inside there, you get your 40% buffering in that radius. It's a crazy landmark, the Ark, but Valdemar going for the minework palace. It does have two unique techs. One in particular that increases the melee armor of your spearmen and horsemen. Kind of curious to see if it's going to go for that in the feudal age. Moving on though, you can also get the extra upgrade in the next stages for your knights, the additional +2 melee and ranged armor, which is going to be kind of crazy. But either way, it's going to go up with the Council Hall. So no Abbey of the King's Play, no free king here for Wham. And, I mean, to be fair, I mean, both can get early aggression, just in two different ways, right? But this is definitely an interesting way to play the HRE with the minework palace. We'll see how it works out for him, Valdemar. Now, I would like to say a very big thank you for everyone supporting the channel, whether it be on Twitch or YouTube. You guys are absolute legends. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And for all you guys watching live on Twitch at the moment, welcome on in. Hope you guys had a great day today, and hopefully you will enjoy this cast and all the casted games we have after. Alright, Gali Duckle, he's talking about his White Tower Rush. Now, that's been making a bit of a splash. I mean, I released a couple of cheese videos maybe a year ago, and then we did it again to Conqueror 2 on that strategy. And obviously, BC now has come up with a guide on how you can stop it. I mean, a lot of it's down to scouting and actually making units. Personally, I think it's, you know, it's definitely a good thing to have happened to the community. I think it forces a lot of people to actually scout, which is actually a huge part of, you know, RTS games. And I mean, I know it's a bit tilting if you face up against it, but it is stoppable by pretty much every civilization, actually. So, yeah, it's definitely been a recent thing for the community to go through, the White Tower Rush, and Gali Duckle is just sharing his escapades with it. And he did it versus English as well. Yeah, I've done that a couple of times. It's plausible, it's doable. Depends on what your opponent's scouting's like. Either way, we're not going to be seeing a White Tower Rush today, right? Surely not from Wham. Opening up with the barracks. This is kind of more of the traditional English, getting longbows and spearmen nice and early. The HRE opting for a stable and archer range, so definitely playing that extended feudal age. I actually think this is something to think about for the HRE. For the longest time, I've really been a big, strong believer of the feudal age for the HRE. It's just that something that was never really done all that often, and primarily because of how strong the castle age was, or is even. Getting the Rex Cathedral with those relics, but now with marching drills, it seems to have a bit more of a prominent kind of feature for this civilization. The reason why I love this civilization as a feudal age civilization is because of the gather rate of the prelate and the eco bonuses that it has. Now, bear in mind, when you want to extend a certain age, you've got to do it for certain reasons. Either because you have a really good strong economy in that age, in that kind of time period, or you have a strong military. The HRE definitely have a strong economy. So if we do say a super extended feudal age, in many ways I think it can suit the HRE in this particular matchup. Having said that, the bonuses for the English do revolve around the farms. So an extended feudal age can work out well for them because the longer they're staying in feudal age, it takes some time for the farm to kick in. Having said that, the farms are pretty early here for WAM, so we're really looking to try and leverage that bonus. Kind of curious as well because he did go for the Minework Palace, so with that feudal age he's going to get the cheaper blacksmith technologies, but also important now, I just wonder whether he's going to go in for the riveted chainmail or not. Now, considering he's going up against spearmen and longbows, I mean, increasing the melee armor of these units for the horsemen and, well, spearmen, which he doesn't actually have. So if he did get riveted chainmail, it only really benefit the horsemen, and it's only going to benefit them up against spearmen, which is always a bad matchup. Even the extra +2 armor is not going to be like hugely amazing. So I suspect he probably won't go for it, but of course he's still leveraging the cheap tech ups for the, from the Minework Palace, acting as a blacksmith. Going to be hiding out in that stealth forest, and the spearmen, longbowmen numbers starting to really escalate a little bit here for WAM. Bear in mind, something that hasn't changed, to be fair, kind of possibly has changed, but we'll talk about it in a second. So the English definitely look to try and mass units and move on out, but the thing they've got to be careful about is not to move out too prematurely or get caught out, because something that's really pertinent to the way that the English play is snowballing. So if you move out too far away and you get caught like he might just get now, although he's got a decent number of spearmen, if you get caught, usually your army gets cleared because you can't retreat quick enough. The mobility is just not there. Good spearman numbers though, poking and prodding on those horsemen. Good number of archers though coming in for Valdemar, especially with the reinforcements. The movement speed on these archers are great, and compounding the issue of snowballing, by the way, is the fact that these archers will have marching drills for free. So comparing longbows to archers, you've got longbows with extra range, which is great for hitting your enemy first. The problem for longbows is they don't have that mobility that regular archers do. But it's compounded the fact that these archers, regular archers, aren't even regular archers. They've got marching drills, so they catch up really quickly. And that feeds into more of that snowball mechanic. Speaking of which, WAM is having to head back home, and to be fair, he'll be able to kind of go back to his network of castles bonus and potentially fight from there. Looks like Valdemar moving out onto the deer camp, and one thing I love about the fact of the HRE being aggressive in the feudal age is it allows them to freely take resources like this. Not so much freely, but more comfortably. Because if you're going to have to be up against the English kind of pressurizing you, it's difficult to get this deer camp in. And you kind of really want that considering how fast the feud gets consumed by the HRE. It's definitely a different change to see the HRE played like this way, right? We typically see them kind of sneakily try and get a castle age and survive a little bit and then get the relics, but the reason why I like this as well, because having units on the field does mean that when he does get to the castle age, he's actually going to be in a better position to actually defend those relics and actually pick them up. And bear in mind, starting off the game with an extra 40% gather rate on a lot of villages is hard to catch up for a lot of civilizations. The English can get there, but it takes some time for these English farms to really kick in. He's got a good number of them already, but probably not enough to counteract that 40% buffering from the HRE. One thing I do love about the Minework Palace, though, is that you can actually train extra prelates from your town centre or even the Regent's Cathedral if you go for that. And the reason why that's kind of important is because, well, the Ark and Chapel can be, in a way, kind of replaced in that regard, whereas you can't really replace those free techs, or not free techs, but, specific techs that are in the Minework Palace, which could come into play later on in the game, potentially. Especially with the Knights. So there is a tech in the Minework Palace that gives access to the Knights' extra armor, +2 melee, and also +2 ranged armor. We'll see if that comes into play. It could be an important one going up against English man-at-arms, potentially. And also having that extra mobility. We'll see. Either way, it definitely looks like Valdemar is making a bit of a push towards the castle age. He's got plenty of food in the bank. And gold's coming in too. Also, probably needs to back away from this, but this is the good thing about these archers. They've got good movement speed on them. Just going to try and kite as much as possible, but ultimately, the English can't really chase this. Not with longbows, at least. So we'll be able to survive with a decent number of them. But it could be a dangerous timing if he's thinking about Castle Age at this point, because it doesn't look like Wham is in any sort of hurry to get there himself. He actually doubles back on himself, Valdemar. And that's kind of important. Might pick off some units. Interestingly enough, Wham has actually opted for a couple of mana times, which would definitely delay his Castle Age timing, if he's considering it. But Valdemar, though, needs to be careful not to be caught out by this mass of units coming in from the south. Man-at-Arms there, just going to be chasing, but of course, look at the marching drills. It just ignores the Man-at-Arms, goes for the wood line straight away. That's really important, right? He just doesn't care about the Man-at-Arms at all. And he's going to try and snipe a village. He didn't actually get the one there in the end, which is a bit of a shame. He does lose a couple of archers for his troubles. But what this does do, the movement and the positioning of the army, means that he can probably take up pretty soon. He's going for the deer camp around the back here, Wham. And a full set of 8 farms already for him. Now, something to bear in mind, whilst it's not necessarily... Wait a minute, okay, hold that thought, hold that thought. What is this? He's going for the Burggraf Palace? What are we seeing today from Valdemar? Going for the landmarks you just would not expect. Or maybe he's cancelling, maybe he's had a different change of heart. No, well, he is still going for the Burggraf Palace. I think he's playing it a bit more safely near the town centre. Do you know what? I got to say, that decision to change that could be totally game-changing. Like, just imagine for a second he actually committed to that. Like, that would never go up. Not with this number of longbowmen, not with this number of spearmen. So, and I mean, that was actually a game-changing decision in a big way. Like, that could have been disastrous, but he avoided it. He recognised the problem. He fixed it pretty quickly. He's got to be careful about the villages and gold, though. No outpost to protect, and the big concern about that is, okay, sure, he's going to get to the castle age with the Burggraf Palace, but he needs gold. He needs gold to be able to fund some man-at-arms. He's going to go for the market instead, just to rebalance the economy potentially here. On the barriers around the back. A couple of horsemen, just raining in a little bit for the HRE, but it's a bit of a sticky situation not having access to gold. Yeah, Jet Set in chat says no eco landmarks. Exactly, he didn't go for Arkan, he didn't go for Regnitz. Going for some crazy plays here. But he does get the upgrade to the Man-at-Arms at least, and the eco is a little bit, a bit low for him, but he will scale that eventually. What's kind of crazy though is the fact that he's got a decent number of units on the field, a decent-ish number of units. He should be able to secure some of those relics. And of course, he doesn't have the Regnitz Cathedral to really make the most of that, but he does have the Burggraf Palace, and he should be able to escalate unit production and do some damage. He's going to dive in right now, and I think this is okay because he's definitely, I mean, he's got the Castle Age Man-at-Arms upgrade. He's got Iron Undermesh, just about to get Wedge Rivets at a really good timing, actually. Just as he's taking the fight, and these longbows actually have to back away. Going up against horsemen, going up against Man-at-Arms is not ideal. Doesn't have the veterancy on the archers just yet, but he does have the Man-at-Arms chomping at the bit. And we'll lose a couple of longbows, although only a handful of them, and the longbows are managing to retreat pretty well. He's going to look to try and cut this as much as possible, but, I mean, whilst Valdemar might be forfeiting these 3 units, it buys him time and space to breathe, right, which is exactly what he needs. He needs that time to get out into gold. In fact, where is he taking the gold? It's actually in the forward position. Might need to drop an outpost there. Does have plenty of wood to do so. Maybe that's what he's saving up for, because that position is pretty precarious, right? If we thought the back gold was not secure, I mean, imagine this gold. But he's pumping, right? The Burggraf Palace going to be helping him a lot here to keep up. I mean, overall, it might seem like a curious decision, but I think without it, he possibly would have struggled with production. And he might have died. The English do have a couple of man-at-arms of their own, tanking as much as possible. They just have to back away from the gold. Won't... I think he yeah, just about survives with that villager. Doesn't lose any just yet. I'm just being a bit annoying here with a couple of longbowmen. A couple of units in the stealth forest, but the main action is right down on the middle where the sacred site is. Man-at-arms going to tank. And the villagers do get the outpost in the end, which is really important. Doesn't have enough stone at all for arrow slits, but does have some garrisonable spots if the villagers need to seek shelter. Which is quite possible with this number of longbowmen on the field. Either way, Wham is possibly thinking about going to the castle age himself, starting to bank up some of the resources. Villagers need to actually start getting working there. Holy smokes, they're slacking, aren't they? Now bear in mind, if Valdemar does actually want to get the relics, he's actually going to have to drop a monastery. We'll just take a cheeky look. Yeah, there it is. There's the monastery. He's already got 1 relic in the bank. Another one on the way. Going to be looking to get heavy maces as well, which will definitely be able to double down going up against these man-at-arms from the English, that's for sure. couple of villagers have to garrison inside. Might be worth actually dropping another outpost because there's just not enough slots here. He did commit to a spring order emplacement. Picking up another relic. And that's going to put him in a really solid position. Another batch of farms coming up for Wham. Slowly but surely going to get to the next stage, and I'm curious to see what he's going to go for, right? Up against the Burg of Palace, it feels like White Tower could be an option. He could potentially try and be a bit greedy, go for the King's Palace. But it is indeed going to be the White Tower, just to protect that economy, play it a bit safer. Probably a good option, actually. Especially when you're up against the Burg of Palace, and the production capabilities for the HRE pretty strong in this game at the moment. Considering he's got, he's got the Burg of Palace, which is effectively a barracks, got an arch range and a stable. He's got a lot of flexibility in his production capabilities. Gonna have to back away on the deer, and I love the fact that he's aware of the situation, right? Doesn't have enough wood for an outpost, so he's got to relocate those villages that are exposed. Oh, Man-at-Arms going in the perfect time on. This is a big issue. I mean, to be fair, he's got a good standing army here, so should be fine. But almost running into the problem that, Puppy Paw would have... not Puppy Paw, that name is confusing. That Valdemar could have run into with that Burg of Palace initial placement. Of course, he relocated it. The White Tower, though, goes up safely, because Wham does have that standing army. Going to take the engagement anyway. We're going to get Military Academy, which will really super duper fast production speed for those units now. 33%. Couple of longbows. Was trying to get some value on that woodline potentially, but I'm going to be taken apart by the Man-at-Arms, although might snipe a prelate if he's paying attention. See if he is. Either way, third relic is already in play, by the way, for Valdemar. That early tech up time, it's really worked out for him. Another one on the way. I mean, he could potentially actually get all 5 relics. There's one more on the map on the right side. That'd be kind of crazy if he decides to and manages to get it. He's starting to wall up in the north, and this will be an important wall to get up, actually. There's deer and there's gold. In fact, there's 2 golds here. Taking the forward ones first. I kind of enjoy that kind of playstyle because what Valdemar's doing is he's soaking up gold on the map whilst he can get it. Because there's every chance that the English will start to pump out units because their power spike really is at sort of the 20-minute mark where they've really started to get the English farms up, right? Because look at this now. It's got 2 batches of 8, more coming down. And this is where the English really start to leverage the bonus that they get. And what that translates to is to a really strong army in the mid to late game. And so the map control that Valdemar has at the moment, it's not necessarily guaranteed for the next 10-15 minutes. So I love the fact that he's taking the forward gold, which is more exposed, and then he can always retreat to the back gold if he's in a pickle. Speaking of pickles, yeah, I've got no segue there. I was trying to find an intelligent way to move away from pickles into Age of Empires 4, make it relevant. I mean, if you guys can come up with one in the comment section below on YouTube later, let me know, because I'm struggling now. I'm just going to have to put my hands up and say there's no segue there for me. I apologise. But he is going to go for riveted chainmail in the end, so going to be increasing the melee armor of spearmen and horsemen by +2. I think there's a lot to be said about that. Like, an additional armor is possible. I mean, it could be really strong in the late game, right? When things are kind of crazy, when you're starting to spam out units, that extra armor could be what gives you the edge. Especially if you're thinking about, going with spearmen. To be fair, spearmen and horsemen, usually they're units that you kind of go for when you're in a bit of bind and lacking gold. But that could be a situation we see yourselves in. We'll have to see. Just sprinkling in a couple of those units could be powerful, like just a couple of spearmen to counteract horsemen or kind of cavalry that the English might go for. The only concern really is that it's possibly going to be a heavy play into man-at-arms as the English, right? They do love to favour those sort of food gold compositions because of the fact that they get the English farms with enclosures with a very safe gold income. Doesn't quite manage to pick up that relic in the end. Wham, denies it. He's got plenty of man-at-arms of his own, though. I'm kind of curious, actually, to see who's going to blink first, because when you go for HRE man-at-arms versus English man-at-arms, you wonder who's going to think about possibly switching to a knight type of play, right? Because knights and man-at-arms both cost food and gold. Who's going to want to make the switch, or possibly make a switch, because crossbow is also an option. Going We're running on in now. Wham. Looking to do some damage. Bear in mind, one thing that's considered in the late game, which is kind of scary for the English, and this is one of the reasons why I wouldn't say dislike the HRE, but I hate playing up against them. I guess you can say dislike HRE. But what it is the inability to raid them. Now, we're not there yet, but if Valdemar decides to go for an Imperial Age with the Palace of Swabia, not only is it going to scale his economy, but it's like, as the English, okay, you kill one villager, the HRE get 2 more really quickly. It's almost impossible to really raid the HRE to death, and so it means you need a long sustained push. Having said that, as a civilization, the English are pretty decent at doing that, especially when you factor in enclosures in the Imperial Age. Of course, we're jumping the gun a little bit, but we kind of anticipate the game heading that way. Looks like Valdemar saving his stone for a keep. I wonder if he's going to be trying to... I mean, to be fair, it looks like he has to be quite defensive about it. I would imagine he places it on the back here where the farms are, because he's actually interestingly placing the farms quite far away from his main town centre, right? It's a kind of interesting base building he's got going on here. And this is what we talked about. The lack of Archon doesn't necessarily mean you just forego that bonus. He's got prelates dotted around. Galidekul in chat says he just burgered the Byzantines as English. Wait, what? I'm not even too sure I understand that. Either way, outpost there with the relic. Gonna be that good defensive stronghold position. Double relic actually in these 2 outposts. One thing to bear in mind though, actually, it can be sometimes not so much a risky business, but having the 2 outposts there like that with the relics, if the relic positions do go down, then you kind of possibly leave yourself vulnerable to a bit of a smash and grab. We'll see if the English can do that. Because look at the unit numbers, 64 military. This is how the English come alive. 22 minutes in the game, these English farms have really funded a lot. And I suspect, surprisingly enough, it feels like, you know, WAM might start looking towards the Imperial Age. One thing to bear in mind, you know, the farming transition for the HRE is pretty hard and it's pretty hefty and it's pretty expensive. They have to pay full cost for their farms, as the English have been doing it slowly and sneakily and trickling them in as time goes. In fact, right from the beginning of the game, right, we saw WAM drop down those 2 Dark Age farms. Now, a lot of the resources for the HRE have been invested into siege. 3 mangonels, which will do a decent job against the infantry mass coming out for the English. Going to be walling up in the north and getting a keep in a strong position. Yeah, we are heading to that moment, actually, of the game where you start to think about gold income. You start thinking about the 8,000 tile gold veins that are on offer. 1 in the north, 1 in the south. Something the English might look to try and challenge. In fact, despite the food resources that WAM has at the moment, it's actually going to be Valdemar that opts for the Palace of Swabia or Imperial Age first. It is cheaper after all, and he's going to place on that wood line round the back. So we're going to see ourselves in a late game meat grinder, it seems. Plenty of barracks being added in. That's definitely a move into man-at-arms. Something that the English love to do. Speaking of gold, by the way, it's going to be expiring this gold pretty quickly. I mean, it's still got 3,000 in there, but with that number of villagers mining it, it won't last that long, so it's going to need to make a play for the middle. Doesn't really have the stone just yet. Does have 3 villagers mining though, so possibly will need a keep, and will get a keep once he needs the gold. But there is that Imperial Age now for Valdemar. Looks like WAM wants to do some damage. Going to go for the Wingard Palace. Interesting, interesting. I love to see it. And now, it has quite a few options here. Does have the Wingard Footmen. Does also have the Wingard Raiders, spawning knights and horsemen. I've got to say though, I kind of favour the Wingard Rangers in this scenario because, don't forget, he went for the Minot Palace Valdemar, right? So he does have the +2 armour on the Spearmen. So if it does go for Raiders, goes for Knights and Horsemen, it's a bit of a bait because those Spearmen will actually trade a lot more effectively. Like in the late game, to be fair, the Knights are a lot more cost effective and population efficient actually. But I wonder how the interaction will be when you... It's just not regular Spearmen that the HRE have. They got +2 melee armour. Could be an interesting one. And considering they, I wonder if, yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense actually to think about it. That's if he goes for the Raiders. I have seen WAM do that in the past, I think. We'll have to see exactly what he decides. Either way though, Puppy Paw, Fan, and also known as WAM. That name is going to confuse me, but it is WAM, I assure you. He's queued up enclosures, as you'd expect, and doesn't actually have all that many farmers just yet, but I'm sure he'll start to seed more farms and make take advantage of the gold. It makes a lot of sense to mine the gold first. That's exactly what he's doing. Getting an outpost on that 8,000 gold vein, and we'll be mopping that up quick time. By the way, just as a quick update, 5 relics in play for the HRE. Bear in mind he doesn't have the Radiance Cathedral. It would be kind of crazy if he did, but he doesn't. Bobby Ball, Fan, Wham, just trying to keep him open. And those palisades are going to be a bit annoying to deal with. Looking to get the Sacred Site as well. 2 mangonels, just venturing on out. Adding in the stables. Okay, so it looks like it possibly could be... I mean, it could go one of 2 ways. I mean, to be fair, with this number of crossbows and longbows, he might go for horsemen. I wouldn't be surprised, actually. He could think about knights, but... he's got quite a heavy armor composition to man-at-arms. So it could be man-at-arms horsemen here for the HRE, potentially. And the horsemen would get the additional melee armor, of course, and ranged armor, in fact. No, I think it's actually just melee armor, which riveted chainmail, rather. That's it, I remembered in the end. And he has researched it, so... yeah, it's just the +2 melee armor on those guys. So it'd be beneficial, tanking against some of those man-at-arms. More so than your regular horsemen. Trying to move on in. The trouble is for Wham, he doesn't actually have any siege, and I think going up against HRE is something you kind of really have to have, because as we said, raiding them is one thing, but can't really raid the HRE to death. They just keep making more villages from that bloomin' Palace of Swabia. Now, Tithe Barns, I wonder if he's got it. He must have by now, right? Tithe Barns would be fantastic for the extra eco boost for the HRE. Well, I'm just trying to break in down in the south, and will break in, but whether he'll commit to it, I'm not so sure, because Valdemar should have his army in his position. There it is. Yeah, it's going to be man-at-arms horseman composition. 4 mangonels about to deploy. Oh, this could be a tricky one for... yeah, he has to back away, rightly so, but takes a massive shot on... oh, God, oh, geez, Louise. I mean, it was a decent shot for sure. Never actually managed to mop up the food here in the end. Bit unfortunate for him, but... farming transition well underway. Look at that food. In fact, let's take a look how much income's getting in there. That's insane. Almost 1,000 more. Like, you talk about the benefits of the English farms and how good they are, but when you've got prelates working for you, it's a whole different ballpark. Although, not the best trade here for the HRE. In the north, he's being aggressive here. There's a lot of them. There's quite a few knights here. These are the desert raiders. These are the, not desert raiders. These are the Wingard raiders, aren't they? Wingard raiders, rather. There we are. Let's go around the back. Kind of raid in with a couple of man. But look at, yeah, he's definitely got, look at the prelate. Okay, I love this play. You know what? The mass prelate play. This is beautiful. He's got 8 of them. Now, he's got to deal with his man-at-arms, though, because that's a problem otherwise. He's going to lose a couple. That's an interesting play, actually. I think it's something that's often overlooked as the HRE, the power of the prelate and getting more of them on the map. Alright, well, Wham still queuing up some of those, where are these villages off to? Hello? Valdemar? Oh, he's repairing, fair enough. And to be fair, he can afford to lose these guys. It's not a problem. He just makes more. Wham heading down in the south, looking to put some pressure, but there is a keep, so I'm not so sure how much value he's going to get out of that, really. With a cannon placement and a relic, not ideal. He's going to burn through here on the north side. Be cautious about it, horseman diving on in. Now, we talked about how it's very difficult to raid the HRE. It's moderately difficult to raid the English because of the defensive capabilities, but it can be done. And considering Wham's been on 1 TC, I think he's added in a second. Has he added in a second? Yeah, he did add in a second in the end. Yeah, he did. Understandably so. But he's putting the Wingard Raiders' name to the test. He's going to be raiding as much as he can on the farms. I mean, to be fair, you do have to guard the villagers. I mean, yeah, sure, you can make them again cheaply, but you do have to do something about it. And yeah, he's sending his man-at-arms now to deal with this. Oh, he might dive on the mangonels actually on the siege. This could be dicey for Valdemar, but I think he has enough. He should be able to body block him. He's got a couple of villages possibly repairing those. And I think at the end he should be fine and safe. He might lose 1 mangonel, just about. Oh my god, okay, he almost kept it alive with the villagers repairing, but didn't quite manage it. But he lost a lot of units there, Wham, just for the sake of one mangonel. Wait a minute. Do you know what's kind of crazy? Look at the miniature numbers. This is the thing, like raiding the HRE just doesn't seem viable, and all of a sudden, look at the miniature numbers, 71 to 38. If he keeps this kind of course of action up, Wham, he's going to leave himself very vulnerable. I don't think these are the way, these raiders, they're not doing what he needs to do. It feels like the push needs to be a bit more with siege and methodical. They've got a good number of man-at-arms to defend, a couple of hand cannoneers added into the mix, and the kind of crazy thing is that the English are struggling on food, right? We talk about the raiders, and they're actually pretty, I mean, obviously cost-effective, but they are still pretty expensive on food, and when you lose them cheaply, it's a problem. Speaking of which, you might lose quite a few here. Denies that key placement, which is massive. That gold, if Valdemar can mop up that gold, that'd be massive. And he's still forcing the HRE away from his base here, Wham, to be fair at least. So the raiders are achieving something. They're not necessarily raiding, but he's forcing the HRE away. And, well, I guess Valdemar's had enough of those knights breaking on in. He's committed to stone walls. He's moving down on the middle with a mass ball of siege. That's actually quite concerning because I'm not so sure how much Wham has in terms of counteracting that. There's a culverin for the HRE. There's no real siege here for Wham, I've got to say. He's going to lose a couple of man-at-arms here. In the middle, raiders running away. They have to, really. This is looking a bit dicey. Mangonel deploy in the stealth field. He managed to get out of there, Wham, and retreat on out. But all of a sudden, it feels like the momentum has definitely swung in Valdemar's favour, right? We can definitely get that sense of feeling of that. Wait, Mangonels, hello? Hello? Alright, they've woken up. Gonna fire off in the stealth first, and that's not gonna be a fight that Wham wins. No way, Jose. I mean, maybe he will if the Mangonels actually don't decide to fight. And Knights dive on in, so he might actually lose quite a decent number of siege engines here. Good pick off there by Wham, I gotta say. He picked off everything. That's absolutely huge. Poppy ball, fan, Wham. Great clutch play there by taking the siege, but he does lose the army. The numbers here just looking way too good. Those man-at-arms, and he's actually trickled in some of the spearmen. This is the danger point, right? He sees the Wingard Raiders, and he's got spearmen now that have the extra +2 armor against melee units, so the horsemen are going to be terrible against them. The knights aren't going to be as good as you'd expect. He's even added a... I thought I saw some Landsknechte there, but no, it's not. It's mostly spearmen. These Wingard Raiders, they are not cut out for the job, I'm afraid. He's going to raid in the north, but this is population he needs in the main fight. Oh my god, Valdemar, look at the units he's got. Just the sheer production. I mean, in particular, it's the farms. It's the macro. It's the prelates. It's the gather rate. It's insane. He's getting 3,500 food per minute. Over time, that just really masses up, and you can see the bank of resources. He's double the bank there, and Wham, he's struggling. He's getting outmassed. This is not looking good for him. He needs to find a way to somehow survive this. Going to lose a Springle to a couple of horsemen diving on in. A couple of hand cannoneers for the English, but that wood line is getting decimated, and there's no Palace of Swabia for the English, of course. They lose villages. It's going to hurt. He's even fighting underneath the White Tower. Valdemar doesn't care because he's at 200 population. He loses his unit. He can make it back quickly. He's got the bank of resources to do just that. You can see the sea of blue units just trickling on in. There's no way to stop this. Valdemar, he's banging his head against the White Tower wall soon, I would have thought. I don't think Wham can do anything to stop it. He's got units trickling out. He's still going for the Raiders. Stop it! Stop it! He's going for the Raiders. But he's trying to raid with them. He's trying to put the name to the test. But the biggest problem is that he's no way to deal with this massive units in the middle of the map. In the middle of his base. Does get a keep. That will help him a little bit. But it's not near the farms. And the bigger problem is that if these farms go idled, that's going to cut him off from both food and his source of gold. Because he's not being able to mine this gold in the south. And oh no, he might even torch this down here, Valdemar. This is not looking good for Wham at all. Considering that he's going to have idled economy because of this. Valdemar, he keeps sending... It looks like maybe he's actually starting to regroup a little... Wait, what? Valdemar says, we have no need for you. He kills the villagers off and he deletes them with one button. Just so he can free up more miniature population. Just to flood units at this point. They are coming in groups and clumps, and Wham is definitely under pressure. I mean, he's still got a healthy villager population, to be fair. 92 villagers, so he's not totally down and out, but he's got to find some way of pushing this away. The biggest concern for him, he doesn't have the villagers out there to be able to build stone walls, right? Because when the units are flooding around like this, getting stone walls up is almost impossible. Valdemar riding on in again, just with the horsemen and the spearmen and man-at-arms. There's just way too many numbers here to deal with. Wham, down to 21 military. And look at this, the wave is just never ending. It's never ending. And he wants to make more palisades. He wants to make sure that gold is safe and secure. He does not want the English to get it. He's got a couple of hand cannons. He's starting to build up a bit of a mass here, Wham, but he's got to keep these units alive. He can't afford to lose them. He's fighting underneath the White Tower, to be fair, and the keep, so that might be the way to do this. But the problem he faces now is that for the longest time there wasn't actually that much siege for Valdemar, so it wasn't doing too much structural damage, but that's all changed. With 2 bombards in the Stealth Forest, he's going to start making short work of the keeps. He's going to start making short work of the barracks. And then there will be no production. Wham, though. Still trying to hold on. It does have that village count starting to dwindle now. He's trying to build a keep on the farms. He's trying to do everything he can to keep his economy safe. A lot of his economy is idled. He's killed 61 villagers here, Valdemar, about to take down the keep, and those villagers running for their lives. It's an absolute decimation, absolute flooding of these this base. And despite the White Tower, despite the 2 town centres, despite the keep, I don't think it's going to be enough to hold off this HRE army. They keep on trickling on in, and eventually you get the feeling time is running out. You get the feeling the game is slipping away. It is getting to that point where there's no return. That point of no return there for Wham. It's about to kick on in, especially if he loses that White Tower. It's possibly going to have an intermittent... Well, there we go. There we go. He must have tapped out. There's the GG, guys. Hope you guys enjoy this casted game. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you give the video a thumbs up. Take care, and see you next time.